Reigns. So before we get into the panel, as I sit down in my chair, which is something I'm supposed to not do, talk while I'm sitting, we're going to have a brief video that's going to explain a little bit about what we're going to be talking a little bit about later. So if y'all wouldn't mind rolling that clip, then we'll get started with the interview. Hello?
Roll the clip.
Oh. And we're not rolling the clip, but now we are. There we go. Should be fascinating.
No.
And there's no audio.
It's truly revolutionizing first response. City professionals, from the mayor's office to the fire department to the Office of Emergency Management, will get breaking news alerts faster than ever before. Dataminr detects breaking information in social media and alerts first responders faster than any other source so they can get to the scene and better protect New Yorkers.
Dataminr is a critical bell ringer service for us. We're able to start our inquiry and our investigation of that incident earlier, and as a result, keep our partners informed earlier, keep the public informed earlier, and get resources out to the scene more quickly.
One of the key aspects of New York City emergency management is public safety. And when you are sitting at the public warning specialist desk, you want to make sure that the messages you get out are timely and accurate.
We continue to look at ways in which we strive and use technology to assist alert the public. And that, using Dataminr, gives us that, that split second, hey, there's something going on, we need to look into it.
Dataminr has really helped us speed up our jobs. It makes something that would take sometimes maybe 15, 20 minutes and could cut it down to sometimes 30 seconds. So it really has helped us.
New York is paving the way for cities across the United States and across the world to shrink the time between when an event happens and when first responders are on the scene. In unexpected emergencies, every second counts.
Wow. Wow.
Woo!
Look at that. It's not like our panel was dramatic or anything, especially with the title, "This Data Can Save Your Life." But I want to start out, before we get into the partnership with Dataminr, talking a little bit about the ways that the city is looking at the tech industry and partnership with tech. And Masha, I was hoping that you could talk to me a little bit about how, well, first of all, what is the budget that the city has to spend on technology?
So that's a tricky question because it's not like one technology budget. We have different offices and they all have budgets that they're spending on various technology needs. But I'm glad you asked that question because this administration is really looking to partner with tech companies to help accomplish some of our equity and safety goals. We've already been doing it, so one great example is ShotSpotter. For those of you that don't know, it's a technology we're using that can sense when a gun's been fired and alert the authorities so that they can get to the scene quicker, which has resulted in us being able to pick up more illegal guns off the street. So that's just one example, but we are looking to find more companies that have the same goals as us, to protect New Yorkers, to serve New Yorkers. If anyone in the audience has an idea or a problem they want to solve, I really recommend that you come speak to me, or our Chief Technology Officer, Miguel Gamina, is in the audience, and he'll love to speak to you as well. We're all ears. We're leaning into it.
If you're leaning into it, can you give me a ballpark on the budget that you'd spend on these things? So like, what does a contract with ShotSpotter look like? What does a contract with Dataminr look like? How much money is there available? Because these guys are startup companies, right? They need to make money. Ted, you want money, right? At the end of the day.
I just want to save lives.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that too. But
yeah.
So just like rough guesstimate, back of the map.
Millions, but sometimes we'll use micro purchases to purchase smaller tools. So if there's up and coming companies there's ways for us to get involved with them. If there's bigger multi-million-dollar enterprises, we engage with them as well. If there's no, it varies.
Ted, walk me through the Dataminr partnership. How did that come about? How did you start talking to them? How did you start working with the emergency management?
Yeah, so as a New York company that specializes in breaking information, for the last 5 years, as we've grown in New York, we were always very excited by the prospect of giving back to our city this technology and product that we had created for so many others, news organizations, financial professionals. So the mayor's office invited us in and said that news alerts could have a profound impact on making the city more responsive and aware of unexpected real-time emergencies. So we were thrilled for no money to strike a partnership with the city that delivered our technology not only to first responders at the Office of Emergency Management, but citywide. This partnership is first of its kind in that it's the entire city of New York, spanning from the fire department to the mayor's office, to first responders to the sanitation department. Really, everyone across city government will now just know about information when it first breaks, as opposed to sitting around and waiting to see it in the news.
So it's a free service that you're providing out of the goodness of your heart to the city of New York.
It started out that way.
As a good corporate citizen. What does it look like now?
I mean, obviously we have a business model. Let's just say we don't make our money in first response.
Yeah, we'll get to that too, I think, in a little bit. But when the initial discussion around the integration started to happen, how did the Office of Emergency Management look at the integration with Dataminr? What were some of y'all's concerns around getting it started, and what did the vetting process look like?
Sure, so New York City Emergency Management, we're the city's coordinating agency for emergencies. So we're collecting information from every other city agency, consolidating it into the situation reports and making sure that all the gaps that are involved in any individual emergency are filled in, and the right information is going to the right people at the right time. And we really are always looking for new and exciting data sources that we can bring in. And a number of years ago, we wanted to bring social media into what we call Watch Command, which is our 24/7 interagency coordination center. Never closed, always open, very unique around the country for local government to have one of these centers. And we wanted to be able to benefit from all the people tweeting and taking pictures all over the city. So we went out, we visited colleagues in Washington, D.C., we visited the Red Cross's social media command center at their national headquarters, and we tried lots of different services in this space. And ultimately, we put out a request for proposal, entertained more than a dozen different potential vendors, and settled on Dataminr.
How large is that contract? Public, right? I mean, I could look it up. But.
It is public, absolutely. So the not-to-exceed value is $3 million over the course of 3 years. But just for the sense of clarity, that doesn't mean we're going to spend $3 million on it. That's just sorry, Ted. But it does mean that we are authorized to spend that amount.
And when you talk about coordination, what other technologies might the office be looking at to deploy when you think about the ways in which emergency response has changed and surveillance technologies and the like around making sure that people are aware of what's going on in the city?
Well, the other big piece that we're working on now is a method of getting information out to the public. It's not just about collecting information. Information that we collect that we don't share really isn't helpful to our partners, it's not helpful to the public. So since 2007, we've run something called Notify NYC, which is the city's emergency public notification system. And right now that's available by email, by text, by social media, by phone call. Later this year, we're going to be releasing a mobile app that's going to really be a game changer for that program and make it a lot more accessible to New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Do you have any data or information about the difference in response time or the difference in notification time between a 911 call coming in to an emergency center and someone tweeting out about an emergency? Like, is it faster to look at the tweets in some cases?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is that we want people to call 911 when they're having an emergency.
But do they?
The answer is not to send a tweet. But anecdotally, during some of the larger emergencies that we've had in the last year, crane collapses, building explosions, large fires, at the same time we're seeing information coming in from 911, we're also seeing information on the social media stream.
Can you talk about some of the specific ways in which Dataminr has been used in some of these emergencies?
Yeah, certainly. I think a great example from recent memory from just yesterday, we had that very unfortunate large fire in Lower Manhattan at the synagogue. And whenever there's a 3-alarm fire or greater, which is a mechanism that we use to measure how many fire resources are being sent to a scene, we always send out a Notify NYC notification to the public. Normally we target the zip code of that fire, but because of the information that we were receiving from the Dataminr service, the large smoke plume, images from not just in that immediate area, but also other parts of the city where people were seeing smoke, we actually expanded the notification to include what we call several borough quadrants, so dozens of zip codes to make sure the public was informed of where that smoke was coming from.
And is it, I seem to remember this from our conversation, you not only are monitoring data traffic that's related to the city of New York, but you're also looking at events that could occur nationally or internationally that might have an impact on sort of the city?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. So, New York City is a global city. We have, visitors and residents and businesses from every country around the globe, and we're interested in how those incidents in those countries or those states are going to impact the city. An example from recent memory was the Amtrak derailment, very tragic in Philadelphia or outside of Philadelphia a number of months ago. The Watch Center picked up on that instantaneously, and moments after that derailment happened, to the point that we actually picked up the phone and called our liaison with Amtrak, who's always informed, does an excellent job for us. And we said, Gary, can you tell us about this derailment in Philadelphia? Was that train coming to New York? And the answer we got from him is, well, what derailment are you speaking about? And it's not against Amtrak, it's just the information's coming in that quickly, and that's how quickly we need to process it.
Isn't that kind of a sad state of affairs? I mean, shouldn't there be better oversight coming from these institutions themselves?
I mean, we're talking about 30 seconds,
Right.
30 seconds from the time we saw the tweet to the time we picked up the phone. Amtrak, the fire department, the police department, all these institutions have very, very robust mechanisms to capture information and share it across the organizations, but social is instantaneous, and we want to make sure that we're as close to that incident as possible.
There's also other examples, like when the Department of Health used it to monitor the spread of Zika, and that's something where there's not a neat channel where you get those issues, and we were able to see when there's publicly available incidents of Zika virus spreading through Florida, we could track it and prepare our own messaging.
Ted, what exactly are people getting when an emergency service or any other sort of city agency gets a Dataminr feed? What are they getting?
So Dataminr has built the first technology that can identify breaking information in social media. Many other companies detect trends or analytics. We don't. We detect that first nugget of information when it first gets published. So ultimately, when we alert, it is a headline. It is a alarm bell to first responders to look here and investigate via other sources. A social media signal is never going to be definitive. It's just the most performative early tripwire for breaking information. And the state of the world today is, information breaks on Twitter. That is something that happens writ large across the world. We've done studies that show that unexpected events break on Twitter over 90% of the time before any other source, and the average time across all those events is an hour across the world. So yes, it can give a split-second advantage, but we're talking about something much more internationally systemic and profound.
Are there any other ways that federal agency, that government agencies are using the data that's coming from Dataminr, or is it just a stream?
Certainly not from us. Our service for the public sector is breaking news alerts. I think that, ultimately, Dataminr started this product that we provide for first response in the news vertical. So Twitter and Dataminr collaborated on building a product for news professionals, CNN and the likes. So ultimately, we perfected this alerting stream of breaking events, and it's the same events that we alert the city officials to, nothing else.
Were you pitching variants of the product before? Because y'all did get spanked a little bit by the ACLU and some other, and you had to change the business, it seems, based on reporting that I'd seen earlier and reporting that we'd done around the product. So that there were maybe alternative ways that you could have gone, and you're just deciding to pull back and relaunch as this.
We decided to focus in on our core value proposition, which is breaking news alerts. It's something that is profoundly impactful in the context of the public sector for first response. And it's a product that truly benefits unequivocally society and gets people to the scene earlier. So we as a company decided to focus on our core in the public sector.
So, not to double down on this point, but I will.
Feel free.
One of our previous panels was the founder of Campaign Zero, and one of the things that she had said on the panel was that she's very concerned about her safety and the ways in which she's been surveilled by the FBI and other law enforcement organizations. Is that something unequivocally that Dataminr would not sort of help do or provide assistance in?
Yes, it's unequivocally something the Dataminr product does not provide.
So the basis for the information that you're providing to law enforcement or not law enforcement, emergency management services is, or emergency management, is Twitter, right? Twitter information. There was a case in 2014 or 2015 where Twitter was basically used as a misinformation tool, not just in 2015, but the prevalence of fake news, I think, is something that we're all aware of. In this instance, Twitter was used to disseminate information about, first or initially, a chemical spill that never happened in Louisiana, then an outbreak of Ebola that never happened in Atlanta, and a police shooting in Atlanta that also never happened. And these were coordinated campaigns that involved hundreds of different Twitter accounts. How do y'all vet what's real and what's not when it's coming from social media?
It's interesting. Many people like to point out that social media can be an incredibly pervasive way to spread misinformation. What's most interesting to Dataminr, having leveraged this data for a long time, is just how powerful a signal social media can be to verify information. You have a set of people out there as eyewitnesses, seeing and hearing the world, publishing everything they see around them.
Yeah.
When the AP Twitter account was hacked a few years back, there was a tweet that was sent out that essentially said, there's an explosion at the White House. Now, when there would have, if there would have been an explosion at the White House, there would have been a lot of eyewitnesses around the White House that would have pulled out their phone and said, there's an explosion at the White House. This is the perfect example of how the data was incredibly powerful to verify that there's no way that the information was real, because nobody saw an explosion at the White House.
But I'd also like to add quickly,
go for it.
That what you just mentioned, that sometimes on Twitter there's misinformation spread, is also the reason that our office exists, because Dataminr is useful to get people to the scene, and the first responders need to be there, but there's also the second responders that need to spread accurate information to the rest of the 8 million New Yorkers that are not directly impacted, but indirectly impacted by it. And so we want to be the center of verified, accurate news 100% of the time.
And for the emergency management.
Just to round out the discussion, we use Dataminr as a bell ringer service. So it's either getting information about an incident that we may not know about yet, which allows us to go to our primary sources, police department, fire department, sanitation, Department of Transportation, the transportation agencies, or the utility companies, or to get more information about incidents we already know are going on. So what are people saying on the scene? What do the images look like? What are the impacts? So we're not making decisions based solely on the Dataminr feed. We are using it as an investigatory tool to look further into an incident.
Mm-hmm. And using Dataminr as sort of a baseline for further relationships, what does the city learn from your work with the company now, and what sorts of things would you look to maybe change or modify going forward?
So the first is, social is a very powerful tool. We know it from both information distribution, but now also information, collection in terms of getting real-time data. But we're not just always interested in the explosion or the crane collapse or the building collapse. We're also interested in other community level issues that may not necessarily make it to the top of the pile, or may not necessarily make it, to 311. We want to be able to use social to leverage it for other community level issues.
Yeah.
Well, and with that, I think that just about wraps it up. I appreciate the time very much from all of you, and thank you so much for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. All right.